In the spring of 1888, the streets of Victorian London were filled with horse-drawn carriages, flower sellers and gentlemen hurrying to their offices. Among them was 28-year-old Edward Ashford, a polite and successful young solicitor. Edward was intelligent, honest and respected by everyone who knew him. Yet he had one unusual problem. No matter how hard he tried, he could never express his feelings. Whenever he wanted to tell someone something important, the words simply disappeared. His friends often laughed and said, "Edward can win any court case, but he cannot speak to one young lady." Edward would smile awkwardly, because they were right. The young lady they were talking about was Amelia Bennet. Amelia was 24 years old and worked with her aunt in a small flower shop near Covent Garden. She had bright eyes, a cheerful smile, and a kind heart that made every customer feel welcome. She loved flowers because she believed every flower carried a different message. Red roses meant love. White lily meant hope. Lavender meant loyalty. Edward had visited the flower shop many times, always pretending he needed flowers for clients or neighbors. In truth, he only wanted to see Amelia. Every visit followed the same pattern. Edward would carefully choose flowers, begin a conversation, smile nervously, thank Amelia, and leave without saying what he truly felt. Amelia began to notice. Every Thursday afternoon, almost exactly at the same time, Edward appeared in the shop, wearing his dark blue coat and carrying the same black umbrella. He always bought a single flower, never a bouquet. One week it was a rose, the next week a daisy, then a tulip. Amelia secretly wondered why anyone needed one flower every Thursday. One afternoon she finally asked, "Mr. Ashford, may I ask something?" Edward smiled politely. "Of course. Who receives all these beautiful flowers?" Edward looked surprised. For a moment he almost answered honestly. Instead, he quietly said, "Someone very special." Amelia smiled. "She must be very lucky." Edward walked home feeling both happy and disappointed. The truth was that every flower stayed in a small vase beside his bedroom window, because he never found the courage to give one to Amelia. A few days later, Amelia discovered something unusual. An elderly customer entered the flower shop carrying one of Edward's flowers. "A gentleman asked me to return this," she explained. "He left it on a park bench by mistake." Amelia recognized the flower immediately. Attached to it was a tiny card. She politely looked for the owner's name before returning it. Instead, she noticed only 3 handwritten words, "For Miss Bennet." Amelia's heart skipped a beat. Before she could think further, the elderly woman added, "That young man looked terribly nervous." Amelia smiled softly. She now understood why Edward bought only one flower each week. The following Thursday, Edward returned as usual. Amelia handed him a fresh white rose before he could choose one himself. "This one's for you," she said. Edward looked confused. "For me?" "Yes," Amelia replied with a smile. "Sometimes the person giving flowers deserves one too." Edward accepted it, completely speechless. After leaving the shop, he laughed quietly to himself. It was the first flower anyone had ever given him. From that day forward, a sweet tradition began. Every Thursday, Edward bought one flower for Amelia, but always left it secretly before she noticed. Every Friday, Amelia found a way to give Edward another flower in return. Neither admitted what was happening, but the entire street slowly noticed their silent conversation through flowers. Even the bakery owner smiled whenever Edward passed by carrying a single rose. One rainy afternoon, a strong wind scattered dozens of flowers across the street outside the shop. Amelia rushed outside, trying to catch them before passing carriages crushed them. Edward happened to be walking past at that exact moment. Without hesitation, he ran into the rain to help. Together they laughed as colorful flowers rolled across the wet pavement. By the time they finished, both were completely soaked. Amelia looked at Edward and laughed. I don't believe a gentleman has ever chased tulips through London before. Edward laughed too. There is always a first time, stood smiling at each other, while rain quietly fell around them. It was the happiest moment either of them had shared. A few weeks later, Amelia received surprising news. Her aunt planned to move to the countryside and close the flower shop. Amelia would have to leave London within 2 weeks. When Edward heard the news from another shopkeeper, his heart sank. He realized he might lose the chance to tell Amelia how he truly felt. Every evening he practiced the words in front of his bedroom mirror. Miss Bennet, Amelia, I care about you. But each attempt ended with nervous silence. On Amelia's final Thursday at the shop, Edward entered carrying not one flower, but an enormous bouquet filled with roses, daisies, tulips, lavender, and lilies. Amelia smiled with surprise. That's quite different from your usual purchase. Edward took a deep breath. His hands trembled slightly. These are not for a client. Amelia looked at him quietly. They're not? Edward slowly shook his head. Every flower I've ever bought was always meant for you. For a moment, the busy flower shop became completely silent. Amelia's eyes filled with happy tears. She reached beneath the counter and placed a small envelope into Edward's hands. Inside was every little card Edward had secretly attached to the flowers over the past year. She had found each one. At the bottom of the envelope she had written one sentence. I've been waiting for you to say it. Edward looked up in surprise. Amelia smiled gently. You never needed perfect words, Edward. Your flowers told me everything. Edward laughed with relief. Then may I finally say the words? Amelia nodded. Please, Edward smiled warmly. I love you. Amelia's answer came without hesitation. I love you too. 1 year later, the little flower shop reopened under a new name. Ashford and Bennett Florists. Edward had purchased the building so Amelia could continue doing what she loved. Every Thursday, he still brought her a single flower, even though they now lived together. Amelia always placed it in the same crystal vase near the shop window. Customers often asked why there was only one flower instead of a full bouquet. Amelia would simply smile and reply, because one flower was enough to begin the greatest love story of my life. As the years passed, people throughout London came to know the little flower shop not only for its beautiful flowers but also for the smiling couple who owned it. Many young couples bought flowers there before their weddings, hoping a little of Edward and Amelia's quiet romance would follow them home. And every Thursday morning, before opening the shop, Edward would hand Amelia a single fresh flower and whisper the 3 words he had once found impossible to say. This time, he never forgot them.